Sandra, welcome to another episode of Asexualise, my asexual life. This is the place to be for education about asexuality, and I share my asexual life journey in order to help you in yours. So subscribe and hit that bell icon right now. So happy Asexual Perspectives Awareness Month. We are in fact on day 12, and today we're going to be discussing, do asexuals want to get married? Do they agree with it? Do they like it or not? So if that's something you're interested in, stay tuned. So tonight I'm going to be reading from Asexual Perspectives 47 Asexual Stories book. If you've got a copy at home, you can follow along. If not, please grab a copy on Amazon. You can also get it from Waterstones, Barnes & Noble, Blackwell's, Walmart, and all good bookshops. So let's crack on to see some of the asexual perspectives in this book. This is a great introduction to asexuality, by the way, and shows asexuality in real life contexts. So, what's your view on marriage? Nikki's story. I'm open to the idea of getting married, though having never been in a relationship and given where I am in life with school, such a commitment isn't something I've really given any thought to. I think that it might be easier to be married to another asexual, but if I was in a relationship with a sexual person who respected who I am and what I want out of our relationship, it could work as well. Wow. That's interesting. They're open to marriage even though they've never had a relationship. So, yeah. Very good. Right. So, that's not the same as everyone's perspective. And I think, going from never being into a relationship to thinking about getting married is quite scary in some ways. And it leaves a lot of things open in the air, doesn't it? But I think it's good that someone's optimistic about that being a good thing. C.A. Altman's story, page 98, if you're following along with the book. What's your view on marriage? And if you were to get married, would it need to be with another asexual? I believe marriage is a societal construct that's put in place for religious purposes or legal benefits for long-term partners. I believe it's unnecessary to get married to prove your love for one another. But sadly, it's often seen as the last stepping stone to prove eternal love and find societal acceptance of a devoted relationship. In some cases, this preconception can have a very negative effect on a relationship since it puts forever you're my one and only strain into the mix. It implies that a short-term relationship isn't worth anything just because you don't think you'd like to spend the rest of your life with that one person. I doubt I'll ever get married, but if it did, it wouldn't need to be with another asexual. I'd facilitate a polyamorous relationship instead, since there's no logical reason why one person should be expected to provide satisfaction for another person's entire set of needs and wants. This person raises some very good points. I did think when they said that about, them not liking the idea of someone being being their forever person, and thinking that it implies that a short-term relationship isn't worth anything just because you don't think you'd like to spend the rest of your life with that one person. Personally, for me, from a monogamous point of view, I don't really like short-term relationships or casual relationships. I think that short-term relationships are very difficult emotionally if you're attached to the person. I think it's very hard on you. I'm not saying there's no value whatsoever in them, but I personally don't like short-term relationships. I think if you haven't found the right person, then it's better to have a short-term relationship with the wrong person if they're not the right person for you. But I don't think you should ideally get into the relationship with the wrong person anyway. Do you know what I mean? And any short-term relationships I've had have usually in the later parts, the latter parts of my life, like nowadays, like more present tense in the last years, they haven't been great, you know. So I think obviously there's great times in any relationship to a certain extent, you know, like even people who are not great to be in a relationship with, you can still have some good times with them. But personally, for me, I don't like short-term relationships if they're damaging relationships, you know. I need to put my charger in. Hang on a minute. So, yeah, I don't personally like, you're gonna see me, there we go. Short-term relationships, but I can understand that some people might find value in them. I think if you're not that emotionally attached to the person, it's okay, probably. If either of you aren't that emotionally attached and you're just seeing it as a thing you both go into short term and you both like that and want it and need it. But I think people can get hurt during that, you know. I personally couldn't do a polyamorous relationship, and I understand that it shouldn't be expected that another person's entire set of needs and wants should be provided by one person. But the whole point of a relationship is you're meant to provide a lot of your own needs, and then the other person is supposed to try to fill the partnership teammate needs, if you know what I mean. So even in a relationship, you're still meant to go and do your own things, have your own friends, see your own family, and keep yourself happy. It's not just up to the person, if you are with one person in the relationship, to satisfy all your own needs and wants. It's up to you to satisfy your needs and wants as well as a person in the relationship. So you need to satisfy the internal happiness need. You need to satisfy still making your life worthwhile need, not relying on your partner for absolutely everything, because that's not healthy. But in a healthy relationship, you become interdependent, and you still should be able to rely on each other to a certain extent as a teammate partnership. So you have needs that you need to meet yourself in a relationship as well as teammate needs. All the needs shouldn't be satisfied just by the relationship you're in. So even if you're in a monogamous relationship with just one person forever, you still have friends usually that meet some needs. You still have family that meet some needs. You still have work colleagues that meet some needs. You still have acquaintances or groups you attend that would meet some needs. Your partner doesn't, you know, there isn't necessarily all the pressure on a partner to meet all your needs if you've got more diversity in your life than just your partner. So when this person brings up, hi Jonathan, nice to see you, lots of love. So when this person brings up the fact that, you know, they facilitate a polyamorous relationship instead, since there's no logical reason why one person should be expected to provide satisfaction for another person's entire set of needs and wants. That's actually a thing that no one should expect in a relationship, for another person to satisfy their entire needs and wants. I think in a lot of movies that are romantic movies, we're led to believe that the person's the be all and end all of life. But even if you think about romantic movies, a lot of these people have still got their own sets of friends. They've still got family there. They've still got their other passions and activities and projects. So although we might end up with one person forever, it doesn't mean to say that we put all our needs, wants, and desires and expectations to satisfy those on one person. We should be spreading them out, if you know what I mean. First and foremost, we should be satisfying our own needs as much as possible. Then we have obviously usually friends and family and acquaintances or connections with other people in work, in business, in groups we attend, in hobby interest groups and stuff like that. So you don't have to have a polyamorous relationship to be able to still satisfy your needs in multiple ways and not just get them met through your actual partner. That's what I'm trying to say. Does that make sense? So I think that's something you need to be aware of, that you can still have a monogamous relationship and have other people satisfy your needs without being in a relationship with multiple people. But however, polyamorous people like what they like, and if you like a polyamorous relationship, you like that, and that's okay if that's what you like. So moving on to Adelaide's story. And yes, what's your view of marriage, Adelaide? I'm reading from Asexual Perspectives book. To me, marriage is a piece of paper. If I were to get married, it would depend on the person, not their asexuality. And I would probably have to have a pretty good reason for getting married. So yeah, the question also asks, would it need to be with another asexual person if they got married? So that's why they're saying that if I were to get married, it would depend on the person, not their sexuality. And one viewer mentioned very recently on this channel that if you're with the right person, sex shouldn't matter. Not having sex should not be an issue. So that's Leon. He watches quite a lot of these videos. Shout out to Leon. To answer the question in the video title for myself, I'm not terribly enthused by the concept of marriage, although that's more about my aromanticism instead of asexuality. Thank you, Jonathan. I always like to hear your opinion. Personally, I'm not interested in marriage. So I have been engaged in the past, which might seem very crazy to you because you might or might not know that about me. So my first long-term relationship, which I had from leaving college, I met the guy in college. I wanted to marry him and I did actually get engaged to him. He wasn't a good person in the end for me. So we split up and obviously I wasn't married anymore. He had an affair in the end with a woman with a kid. And yeah, so obviously that's no good, right? And he told it my mum before he told me, which is even more bizarre. And that was after we just got a mortgage. It was it's the only time I've ever had a mortgage in my life. And it was just before Christmas that he told my mum. So we got a mortgage on the 1st of December. We moved in together into our actual first home we bought together. Then on the 21st of December, he told my mum before he told me they'd been having an affair with a woman with a kid. He'd been telling me that he'd been working 2 jobs. And I wondered how he ever slept. And then he'd been, yeah. So that was very betraying, as you can imagine. So, and I have only ever had one other instance where I was very close to getting engaged, which was in my last long-term relationship. The guy bought an engagement ring, but he never asked me to actually marry him because I didn't want to get married in the end because he wasn't a good guy for me. And I said in the end I would never marry him. And he'd spent all this money on a ring that he'd been saving up for ages. He wasn't a good guy. He was very abusive in every way, but sexually. So if I'd have got married to him, it would just be like living death, if you know what I mean. It was like being in a mental prison with him. I celebrate every year in every November the 5th since 2011 that I'm free of a mental prison. It was awful. So I wouldn't wish that on anyone. And yeah, but he used to use it as a weapon against me in the end, like, oh, only if you behave yourself and do X, Y, and Z will I give you this ring. He used to blackmail me with the engagement ring. Luckily, I'm not that materialistic person, you know? I can do without an engagement ring. I can do without. It's like £1,000 he spent on it by the time he paid it off in installments. So he kept the ring for himself, basically. I thought, oh, well, he'll probably sell it after we split up or give it to another girl. Probably sell it because I'll be surprised if another girl actually wanted to ever marry him. But there we go. And I'm not saying that to be horrible. I'm saying that because, well, you would know if you knew what it's like. But anyway, so yes, that was very interesting. Blackmail is never a good thing, obviously. So, but I wasn't interested. And in the end, he was seeing another girl, another one. Quite interesting. Yeah. So not only was he not good with me, in the end, he left. He told me, confessed up, and then left me to go and say goodbye to her because she was a foreigner in this country and been living in the same place as him, like in the same block of flats. Well, it was a house. So it wasn't even a block of flats, it was a house, and she was living in another room. And I didn't know he'd been seeing her and having her in his room. And then when he told me, I was just calm about it, which he wasn't expecting. And he goes, oh, I've got to go and say goodbye to her. She's leaving today, the country, and speak to my mate. There's no consideration for my feelings. But yes, so that was like another hard situation to be in. But after that, I just decided I never ever wanted to get married ever again. And then the short-term relationship I had this year, the guy did tempt me thinking about marriage again, which was very, very strange. But I said I would only do that if he'd been in this country of his own accord for 5 years and got his own visa. That was the stipulation. I'd consider it then. That was it. And after that splitting up, I'm back to like, I don't want to get married again. I don't currently want to be in a relationship ever again currently, but I'm not saying that's not going to change in the future, but I don't currently want to be in a relationship again. And I'm not saying that's going to be forever, but I'm saying that right now, which is good. So, yes, I don't think you need marriage to be happy. And also, I actually do think it's a very trapping thing. If you end up being with the wrong person, then you're tied to a contract with someone you can't get out of. You're financially tied to them usually, you're contractually tied to them, and it's awful. Really awful. And narcissists and abusers can want you to get married to specifically put you in a contract with them so that it's harder for you to escape what they're doing and you're tied to them. But obviously there's some people that get married who are really kind, caring people, loving, and they have the most beautiful marriages and they love each other implicitly and it's the best thing that's ever happened to them. So you've got pros and cons depending on who you're dealing with. But I have known through the Stop Abuse for Everyone program I went through. So I did a course back in 2013, which is by SAFE, Stop Abuse for Everyone. And it was a course to recognize signs of abuse after I split up with my long-term ex, like 2 years prior to that. And it was a 14-week pattern changing course, and it really changed my life. It was how to spot narcissists and abusers, and it was educational stuff that I'd never seen before in my life at that point. Obviously, I'm a lot more clued up now. And so that was just something that was really good for me to do. So if you ever get a chance to do anything like that, or read my books, because I do talk about some stuff like that in my books, or watch these videos on my channel, it's very important, you know. And there was someone there, which I can't say who it was for confidentiality reasons, but they were talking and said their husband, they were married for 2 years. Their husband never abused them. He was really good. And after 2 years, he started abusing that person. So just because you've been married for a while doesn't mean to say people don't change. And that's an awful thing to think, isn't it? An awful thing to say. You know what I mean? They have to go through. But these things happen and it's not nice. So I think a lot of the time marriage is very difficult. I think you're better off not getting married in general from a romantic point of view, because I'm a hyper romantic. I like the idea, oh, I'm with my together forever soulmate, you know, but often it doesn't work out like that, does it? The soulmate doesn't turn out to be the soulmate you thought at all. And so from a romantic point of view, yes, sometimes I think about it, but from an actual practical point of view, I'm like, why would you want that? You're tied to someone then, Sandra. It's not a good idea. You know, it's hard to escape. I know someone in one of my ex jobs, and they had to literally change their identity and move to where I worked from up country because their person that they were trying to get a divorce from was that violent to the point where they could be dead. So they had to get the police involved and change their identity and move to where I worked. Obviously, I can't reveal anything more about them. This is one of my old jobs. I don't work there anymore. But that's a danger they were put in. And that took 5 years or more, I think it was, to get divorced from that person. And they were so stressed out. They were really poorly with their mental and physical health as a result. And it was just awful for them. So I've seen the side that's bad of marriage, you know. However, my parents have been married for 55 years. They don't argue very often. And I'm not saying whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, because obviously conflict resolution is important in relationships, but they don't really argue much. And you know, they don't really shout much at all at each other or anything like that. So in terms of being together, you know, it seems to work for them, but they've got a very traditional marriage, which I'm the opposite of. You know, my mum's a housewife. My dad used to go out to work. He's retired now completely. And my dad's not well, so my mum has to look after him more now. My dad's actually on permanent oxygen since this January. He was rushed into hospital and his lungs don't work properly on their own. So sadly, he's got to have permanent oxygen, which is difficult. And my mum's just got a broken foot when I'm recording this in July 2024. I got broken back and she's got broken foot at the same time, which is quite weird. Both got 2 broken bones. So, but my mum's having to look after my dad even more, even though she's got broken foot and a pulled muscle in her back from where she fell and broke her foot. So that's really hard because she's got to do like loads of stuff. But my mum does love being a housewife to my dad and does love cooking for him, cleaning for him. So she's doing what she loves, which I think is very rare. I don't think many modern women love doing that stuff these days, but my mum's very traditional. My dad's very traditional. My dad believes that a woman should do that. I'm totally opposite to that, right? I don't personally agree with that. But that's the way they are, and it works for them. So, as I say in my Diary Confessions of a Hyper-Romantic Asexual book, 78 Life Lessons to Age Your Life, one of the life lessons is about the fact that only the people in a relationship should be defining the relationship, no one else. So the fact that my parents' relationship is not the type that I would have, it's been successful for them for 55 years. So no one should be, like saying what should be happening in a relationship other than the people that are in it. No one has the right to do that. So, that works for them. That's good. So I think if you do get married, you've got to work out beforehand, ideally, what's going to work for you in the marriage, not what works for everyone else, right? Especially if you're asexual, you have to know that the person's, if they're not going to have sex with you, is going to stay like that. You can't guarantee that they're not going to change. But some people say they're asexual and they're not. They're abstaining for marriage. They're abstaining for religious reasons, which won't allow them to do that unless they get married. And then when they get married, they expect sex. And they don't believe in asexuality. So they think that you're just doing that. You're just abstaining. So please be very careful of this if you do get married. There are people who are asexual who are married without sex to other asexuals. Or I actually know an Indian girl who's married to her Indian partner who's not asexual. She's asexual, but he isn't. And as far as I know, they don't have sex because he accepts her for who she is without that. And there's more important things in their relationship, and they've got a beautiful connection and bond, and she loves them to bits. She happens to be aromantic and agender as well, which is quite unusual. And he's a cis heterosexual guy. And so that's quite interesting. Assigned male at birth, identifies as male, born male, whichever language you prefer to use. And so, so that's very interesting. Romantic guy as well. So, but their relationship is beautiful. So, and it wasn't an arranged marriage, but they're like soulmates. So that worked out really well. I also know someone who's not asexual, who's highly sexual, Indian, and he met the sexual love of his life and they're married with a kid. And he seems really happy and he's mended his ways. He used to be very much a womanizer years ago. So I'm giving you some examples of successful marriages. Do you know what I mean? Not just, and I know 2 lots of asexual couples that are married, happily married, young couples. And the, sex repulsed couples, as far as I know. Right? So I think that's amazing. So I don't think all marriage is bad, but I think there are a lot of downs to marriage, not like cons, not just pros. And I think for me personally, like, there's a lot of scary cons out there. So I would always say take your time. And I would always say, like, make sure if you are talking to someone who says they can live without sex, make sure they can really live without it. And they're not just saying that. And then when you get married to them, they expect to have sex with you. Find out if they are just abstaining for religious reasons, for example. Find out their long-term views. Find out like what type of things is in their history. Like when you're talking to them, find out, like were they looking to have sex in their previous marriages if they were engaged before and this type of stuff. Ask some careful questioning and see what actually is the truth, because some people don't reveal the truth. They hide it. So be very careful of that. Right, so we're talking to Zoe now. What's your view on marriage? And if you were to get married, would it be with another asexual? I won't get married unless it is to another asexual. Fear that a sexual person would eventually demand sexual activity and reject me when it is not provided. That's interesting because I just said that and I didn't actually read it before I said it. So it just happens to be the next story that I had set up to read. I must have been psychic on my own book. I've never been married except for the quasi-marriage that was my 5-year live-in relationship. I would marry if I could find the love of my life, best friend, soulmate. My marriage deal breaker is monogamy, both physical and emotional. That is what I want to give my partner, and I would want it reciprocated. I actually love this, what they've written. So I was already talking about that's a danger of marrying someone who's not asexual, is that they'll change after marriage. So I definitely think you need to spend a long time trying to find out if that's really what they can live without, if they're saying they can live without sex. Of course, they can be lying. We cannot account for whether they're telling us the actual truth or not. But they might slip up, they might contradict themselves. You might find out in the past they've got a history of a lot of sex, or they've got no sex before marriage because, like, oh, why didn't you have sex before then? Oh, because it's against my religion. Then you've got your answer, right? That it's probably they are abstaining because of their religion. Some might say, well, I've never had it, so I don't need it. It's true, that might be possible. But again, you've still got to use careful questioning and see how sexual they do get with you in the way they talk or the way they do touch you, even if they don't have intercourse. Always pay attention to that. Pay attention to their actions, their reactions to what you say, and their words. So if you say, I hate sex, I never want it in my life. So if I marry you, I never want sex. And they'll be like, well, why don't you want sex? In an inquisitive, curious manner, like, oh, well, I'd want it. So why don't you want it? But they might not say it like that. I'm like, oh, why don't you want sex? And if they say, oh, right, okay. Like, I think they should talk a bit about it with you. I think if they just say, oh, yeah, that's fine, there might be something like they're going to have sex on the side, or they're going to hire a prostitute, or they're going to do something. Because if it's just they accept it so quick about it without actually having a discussion in the open about it, then it might be they've got an ulterior plan up their sleeve. And that's why they can brush it off and not be faithful to you. But I think if they are going into details about, oh, so why don't you want it, as in they're saying it in the tone of voice that would imply they're really interested in it, even though they've said they're not. I've had guys say, oh, no, I'm not interested in sex. And what some will absolutely avoid the conversation completely, which I've later found out that often means they can't be faithful. And it's not good to avoid something like that anyway, because it is going to be a factor. Or, you know, they've actually started asking questions in the tone of voice that means they don't really see why you don't want it and want to know why. Rather than, oh, yeah, do you want to discuss that? I'd love to hear more about your perspective on that. And, you know, of course I will. Of course, I'm happy to not have that if that's what you want to need, because I love you and want to be with you, right? But if they're asking you a question in a certain tone of voice, that means they're like, hang on a minute, I really like it and want it. So they're asking you, oh, like, why don't you want it? And instead of it being just a curious question because they care about you, it's got an ulterior motive. So listen to tone of voice. Jonathan, I feel like if someone was going to have sex on the side, that should be agreed upon as part of the relationship. Yes, Jonathan, it should be. Totally. But as a sex repulsed asexual who wants monogamy, like Zoe wants monogamy, I know there are some guys, for example, when I've been on the dating scene for 10 years, on online dating, who say they can live without sex, but really they're going to have it on the side with someone else. I had an Indian guy, right, who actually confessed to this with me. Like, he's like, oh, yeah, fine. And then I asked him if he watches porn, and he said yes. And I see porn as cheating. So I just said I couldn't be in a relationship if you're going to do that with you, because I don't agree with that, the guy doing that in a relationship. So in the end, he said, I can't remember the exact conversation, how it went. But in the end, he told me the truth. He said, I can't be with you, Sandra, because I would cheat on you. And I'm telling you that because I do care about you. He's still friends with me on Facebook and likes my posts occasionally because he was honest in the end. He said, I would cheat on you, and I'm being honest about that, and I care about you. That's why I'm being honest. He didn't tell me that immediately, but then he said that would be it. And you know, I would be watching porn, and also I'd be cheating on you with the person because I need sex, he said. So I can't live without sex. I said, how often do you need sex? He said 3 times a week, which I think is the average for a sexual guy. But he told me, you know, if he didn't get that, he would cheat. And so we can't be together. And he said, I'm saying that because I do care about you enough to tell you the truth. It's kind of hard hearing that, right? You're like, that's really nasty. But then he's being honest. And he's not doing anything with me or progressing any further because he knows that he needs that. So, yeah. So this person's marriage deal breaker, Zoe, would be monogamous, both physical and emotional. That is what I want to give my partner. I want to reciprocate. And I feel exactly the same way. I would want both physical and emotional monogamy as well, because some asexuals, they can still cheat emotionally, even if it's not physically. This is not much talked about either. So you could be having a relationship with someone and then emotionally intimate with someone else beyond just like friendship, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I mean, if you've got a problem in a relationship, you should be going to the person. If they're a safe person, which if they're a healthy relationship person, they would be, going to the person you've actually got the problem with and sorting it out rather than gossiping or talking to someone else about it, right? And if someone, you know, if there's someone in a relationship that's closer to someone else outside the relationship, emotional connection, they're telling them all their thoughts, feelings, secrets, and they haven't got anything like that with their primary partner, they're giving it all to their friend. I'm not saying you can't do that with a friend, because I think some friendships can be really close like that. But I'm saying if you're doing it at the expense of your relationship, or doing it instead of going to the person in the relationship, you're relying on all that with the closeness of other people. It's like emotionally cheating, you know? So you'll be aware of that, because I've got a very emotionally connected friendship with someone who's close to me, you know what I mean? But obviously in a relationship, you still have to give a lot of time and attention to your actual partner. I'm not in a relationship, thank God. But I would want physical and emotional intimacy, monogamous. I wouldn't want a guy to go around having sex with other people. Like some people in this book, like the person previous to Zoe, one of the people previous, I said they want a polyamorous relationship, which is a relationship with multiple people. I personally, although some people agree with what Jonathan said, that, you know, that you, as an asexual person, you might be fine with someone having sex with someone else outside the relationship. Even if they're in the relationship with you and not having sex, you might be all right with having sex elsewhere. I personally would never be happy with that whatsoever. That to me would definitely be cheating. I know it's not cheating as in you giving your permission. I'd never give my permission to do that though. And there's going to be an emotional attachment with that other person. Even if they say there's not, there's going to be emotional attachment from one of the people. If they're having sex regularly with a specific person outside the relationship, they're having sex with multiple people, maybe not, but usually one person gets attached to the other, even if it's not reciprocated. So they'll be still forming an emotional bond with someone else, you know, and that can get quite messy and hurtful. I require, if I ever get into a relationship again, monogamy. I think I don't deserve any less just because I don't have sex. I don't see that decreases my value and worth at all. At all. So I don't see that I need to go and say to a guy, you can go and get sex elsewhere. If he wants sex, don't be with me. He would not be the right person for me. I don't want him to approach me. I don't want him to get into a relationship with me. I don't want to be with a guy who wants sex and needs that. If he needs that, go to someone else. Please do not come near me, because I'm not interested in that. You know, you can get someone without sex, you know, who you can love. Be best friends, soulmates, love for your life. That's what I like about this. Because, you know, this person, Zoe, said, I would marry if I could find the love of my life, best friend, soulmate. That's actually what I've always wanted, you know, to have a best friend, soulmate, love of my life all wrapped up into one, which I've always thought would be with an Indian guy. Preferably asexual, but not necessarily, but it's better with an asexual, I think. And now I've kind of like not pursued that anymore. Right, after 10 years of pursuing my Indian soulmate that ended up not being the one, a number of times I'm now like, okay, I would be open to guys who aren't Indian anymore, even though I have a preference for Indian guys. It doesn't have to be an Indian guy anymore. necessarily. Maybe I was with an Indian guy in a past life, which I still believe, but maybe I'm not meant to be with an Indian guy in this life, which is fine. I pursued that for 10 years. I've done a good shot, but now I'm focused on my career anyway, which is much better. Writing books and YouTubing and live streaming and helping asexuals. That's so much more fun and better. Right, Fiora's story, asexual perspective. What's your view on marriage? And if you were to get married, would it need to be with another asexual? Marriage is for some people, but not necessarily for everyone. Right now, I'm not sure I want to get married. But if I do date someone, marriage would probably be the end goal. And no, the person wouldn't have to be asexual. So that's very interesting. Like, a lot of people do believe that you should have relationship goals together, which I totally believe as well, because a healthy relationship usually has some relationship goals, like where you see the relationship going. But I personally don't want marriage, so I don't see that as an end goal for me. And so a lot of people, especially traditional heterosexual people, for them, marriage is an end goal. It's what you both work towards together to form a secure, happy, healthy relationship before you get into marriage. And marriage is meant to be the ultimate commitment. But as we know, many people have affairs even when they're married. So just because they're married doesn't mean to say they're going to be committed forever. Unfortunately, they should be, but doesn't work out like that necessarily. So yes. And what does L. Hardwick think in here? Right. What's your view on marriage? And if you were to get married, would it need to be with another asexual? My view on marriage is apathetic. But I don't think this has anything to do with my asexuality. If I were to get married, it wouldn't need to be with an asexual, but that would certainly be my preference. No low-lying guilt. Now, excuse me, I'm just moving my foot. This is a very interesting one. No low-lying guilt. So what this person means is they're assuming that asexuals don't want, need, or like sex, which is not true categorically of every asexual, because some asexuals are demisexual. Some demisexuals can live without sex, don't want it, don't need it. But other demisexuals know they're demisexual and know once they've formed a deep emotional bond with someone, they will want sex because of sexual attraction. And therefore, they want to get that feeling back again if they've had it previously in a relationship. So therefore, they'll try and pursue a relationship with someone where it can eventually lead to sex. So just to dispel any myths about that type of thing. But obviously, a lot of asexuals don't want, like, or need sex, don't have to have it. So that's why they're saying no low-lying guilt, because they might feel guilty if they got married to someone who would usually want sex, but they're like giving it up to be with the asexual person. But we have to remember, what are they getting? They're getting a beautiful asexual person, right? Because a lot of the time it's framed as they're giving up something like a drudge, or it's so bad they're giving that up to be with an asexual person. Like, the asexual isn't worth giving that up for, right? Obviously, everyone has their own needs. So if they need, want, like sex that badly, yes, they shouldn't be in a relationship with an asexual who doesn't want, like, or need sex at all and doesn't want it ever, right? But they are getting a beautiful human being. Just because someone has sex, for example, doesn't mean to say they're a nice person. You can get loads of heterosexuals, for example, who love sex, who might be great at it and give spectacular sex, but be absolutely bad behaved, badly mannered, bad characteristic traits person. So just because someone has sex or likes sex doesn't mean to say they're a good person. And if you're not having sex in a relationship, being with an asexual person, that asexual person's kind-hearted, caring, empathetic, loves you, adores you, you're getting a beautiful asexual person. So the asexual shouldn't feel guilty if that other person said they don't need sex. But I do understand where it's coming from, because when I was in my short-term relationship, a couple of times I said, "Are you sure you can be with me without sex?" Because I knew that he was heterosexual and I wasn't, and not, and I'm asexual. And so a couple of times I did get a bit, well, especially once, I got a bit upset about that, because I thought, oh, I can't do the thing that you probably would like to do with me because I can't be like that. But that was one of the good things, that he reassured me that no, he doesn't need that. But then he said stuff like, oh, I could hire a prostitute if I wanted that. Then it made me question, like, thinking, oh, Is that something you're actually going to do then behind my back? Go off with a prostitute or what? And then another thing cropped through my mind, then thinking, why would you need to hire a prostitute? You saying that you're that crap looking and that unattractive that you can actually get someone for sex? Because I got loads of guys that would have sex with me in a heartbeat, and I'm not interested in sex. So why would you need to hire a prostitute when there's loads of people that like sex? That was really weird. I thought that afterwards. One, I thought it's a weird thing to say anyway. First of all, I accepted thinking, oh yeah, that's quite logical. If you wanted to go do that, you would have done that by now with a prostitute or whatever. Then afterwards, I was thinking, like, after the relationship, I was thinking, well, maybe that wasn't such a good thing he said, because, you know, he could have, you know, ended up doing that if you stayed with him. And also, at one point, he was really, you know, like, some of the things he was saying was bad, right? I've explained over the weeks, gone from self-blame to actually realizing what was going on, and he had some narcissistic traits unfortunately going on. One of the things he said was he's better looking than me. Well, if you know what narcissistic traits are, they go through a process of like love bombings, talking really nicely to the person, being something they're not, getting that person into a relationship, then they start devaluing you, right? That devaluing bit with the looks didn't work with me, because I'm confident in my looks regardless of what he said. And I was the one who told him he's really good looking, the best looking guy I've ever been with. But I kind of think that when I'm in a relationship anyway with the guy that I'm with, because it's just normal and natural for me personally to feel that way. And he was very good looking for me. But I doesn't mean to say that he was better looking than I was. I don't compare me as a female, whether I'm better looking than him or not. In a relationship, that's competition as well, which is another unhealthy trait, right? You don't compete with your own partner, right? And you don't say stuff like that to your partner. It's rude and it's mean and it's nasty. But the next day I told him, I said, you're not better looking than me. I said, you're the best looking guy for me. That's what I said. And when you just think about that, and then you think about the fact that he said he takes 5 minutes to post a photograph on Instagram because he's got to get the pose right. He's got to like put wherever he on the filters or whatever he does to make himself look good, basically. Clearly, you're not a good looking guy if you can't post a photograph because you're scared of what everyone thinks, because you have to spend 5 minutes making sure you've got the exact right look that you think everyone will like, even though you say you don't care. Of course you do, if you're spending 5 minutes trying to like master a photograph and manipulate it to look like your best. If you're that good looking, you don't need to do that, right? If you're that confident in your looks. And when I think about him saying about a prostitute, I'm thinking, actually, you must think you're not good looking. Because if you don't naturally think that you could go and get sex from some other person easily, and get sex anyway in the grand scheme of things, you have to hire a prostitute to do it, then that's not someone who thinks they're really good looking. Someone who thinks they're really good looking genuinely would be like, I can get any woman I want and sleep with any woman and have sex with any woman. They wouldn't be talking about hiring a prostitute, paying someone to have sex with them. I don't have to pay someone to have sex with me. If I wanted it, I could easily get it multiple times from multiple guys, so easily, to the point where in one of my old jobs, this girl, because I don't she knew I was asexual, didn't like sex. She was like, how come you get all the guys that are sexual and want sex with you and I don't? She got this guy who didn't want sex with her, who was nice but not her type, because she loved sex. She's like, why can't I get a guy like you who wants sex? I'm like, you can have one if you want. I'm not interested. Do you know what I mean? But she was like, I don't understand it. You're the one who doesn't want sex, and I'm getting the guys who don't want sex, and you're getting the guys who do want sex. And I'm like, have them. I don't want them. You know what I mean? So that's where you're like, yes, his what he says about himself comes deeply unstuck. And obviously a person who's very insecure says stuff like that, like I'm the best looking, is like a very insecure thing to say. So I like my looks, but I don't run around saying I'm better looking than any person I've been in a relationship with, or I'm the best, better than anyone else. I'm the best for me. But that's it, because I like me. But you know what I mean? I don't go around comparing myself to other people in that way, right? I don't wear makeup usually, and I like the fact I'm naturally beautiful, but that's what I think about myself. That's what I love about myself. But I don't go around thinking that I'm better than someone. Do you know what I mean? I think I'm the best person for me because I'm me. You know what I mean? I think it's good to self-love. Right. So just wanted to put those points out there. Right. So Katie's story. I want to get married eventually, or at least find some kind of close friend I can share my life with. I would want it to be with another asexual, but it does not have to be, depending on the person. Yeah, it's kind of interesting how many people do prefer to be with another asexual. And I think the reason that is because there's less pressure for sex. There's less pressure for sex stuff, like touching. There's less pressure for sex acts. There's less pressure for all those types of sexual stuff. Plus, there's usually more understanding. One asexual usually understands another asexual a lot better than someone who's not asexual at all. But I think it does depend on the individual, your own individual needs. I think it does make a difference. For example, I'm a hyper kisser, and a lot of asexuals in my experience, I'm interested in guys, not that interested in much kissing. Some of them like little pecks, some of them might like a little bit of kissing. I like a lot of kissing. I don't think that's normal for any sexual orientation. I think I'm very rare in the world, but I love kissing so much to the point of I'm talking about hours and they just fly by, and it's like I'm not bored with that because most people would be by then. Most people would get bored probably in a 10-minute kiss. I've been kissing nearly non-stop for 4 hours, plus 4 hours, and 4 hours plus, I should say, and I'm still not bored. No, I mean, that's not normal in the grand scheme of things, but it's my normal. So, yeah, I think that's quite rare, and I think it's hard to get matched. But there's probably a guy somewhere in the world that thinks I'm a hyper kisser and I want to hyper kiss a girl somewhere, and they're like, where is she? It's really hard to find. Oh, everyone wants sex, but I want the kissing. And I'm like, yes, I'm over here, but you can't find me yet, clearly. So Claire Evelyn's story. What's your view on marriage? And if you were to get married, would it need to be with another asexual? I don't really like the concept of marriage, says Claire. I like traditions, but I feel many marriages today are done as an extension of people's egos and whims. I have to agree with that person. I would get married to an asexual or sexual, but I wouldn't do a wedding. So that's really weird. They say they don't really like the concept of marriage, but they would get married, but wouldn't do a wedding. So it's still like having marriage, even though they don't like the concept of it. So it is interesting. But yeah, I do agree that I think, I do think some people do get married without really thinking about the consequences. And some people do get married to have the wedding dress, to have the big evening do reception, it's called, to have the hen do, to have the stag do, to have all the presents, to go away on a honeymoon, and they don't really think about the long-term consequences of the marriage intricately enough. It's more to do with the experience of having it. Interestingly, years ago, I was a bride in a carnival. A bride in a carnival. You heard me right. So I've actually worn a wedding dress without getting married. And that was great because I thought at the time, even because I didn't want marriage, and I'm like, oh, I don't have to get married. I felt so relieved, but I've actually got the experience of wearing a wedding dress and I look damn gorgeous in it. I was thinner then, but just because I'm not thin anymore doesn't mean to say I'm not still gorgeous in my own right. But I couldn't fit into that wedding dress now. I don't have the wedding dress. It was just for the carnival. But the person who made that wedding dress, called Sheila Thompson, she's made wedding outfits for the royal family in the UK. So she was quite a famous tailor, and she had a shop, like a place of work in Dawlish itself. Dawlish is a small town where my parents live now. And so that was quite weird and bizarre. But I wore a black wedding dress with white roses, and then there was 2 other girls behind me. So I was at the front in a black wedding dress with white rosebuds, and then there was 2 people behind me, like in a triangle shape. So either side of me looked like a triangle like this in the end, with white wedding dresses on. I think they might have had black roses on, to match. So it's bizarre because I was wearing a black wedding dress, which isn't normal, but I loved it. I loved being a bride for the day, like in terms of not getting married, but just dressing up like that. And it was an amazing experience that I'll remember for the rest of my life. So it doesn't matter if I never get married. I've had the wedding dress experience, which is much better than the marriage, in my opinion. So Darcy's story, what's your view on marriage? And if you were to get married, would it need to be with another asexual? I have never been one to dream about my wedding, even as a child. I'm actually enraged. Oh, sorry. I said enraged. You can tell how enraged I am about marriage at the moment. I am actually engaged, they said, not enraged, to be married to a sexual person. Wouldn't that be funny if it said I'm enraged to be married to a sexual person? I am actually engaged to be married to a sexual person. Marriage is a serious commitment to me, and I have high standards for the person I am marrying, meaning that I do not want to feel like I'm settling at all, which I don't. I think that's a really important point, that you should never feel you're settling. If you're marrying someone but feeling you're settling, there's something that you don't want, it's not going to bode well for your future. You're going to end up building resentments, building up scenarios of what if things were different, and feel you're missing out. So don't have those situations and feelings where you feel you're missing out. Make sure that if you do end up in a relationship where you marry that person a lot, that you feel that you've got the right person for you, who loves you just as much as you love them, and who's putting as much care, time, attention, and effort into you as them. So, Samantha G's story. What's your view on marriage? And if you were to get married, would it need to be with another asexual? I do not believe in marriage, but if I were to get married, I would only ever marry an asexual who doesn't want children. And I think that's an important point as well, because I don't want children. I categorically, even though I've wanted marriage in the past, I've never wanted kids. And even since 15, I never wanted children. So if you do get married, you've got to make sure the other person doesn't want kids if they're going to get married to you. Because if you definitely don't want kids and they turn around later on and say, well, actually, I've changed my mind, you categorically don't want them, that's never going to work. I knew at 15 years old, I never wanted kids. That's never changed. My parents knew that and they accepted it about me. They wouldn't have a choice. But anyway, I don't want something inside me. And I also questioned myself at 15 if I'd want to adopt, because that's the only way I would have had kids. And my answer was no. I don't want that lifestyle. I want to live my life for me. I want to be free in that way. I don't want the lifestyle and responsibility of looking after children. I don't think there's wrong with that. Anything wrong with that if someone wants it and can do it and be happy doing it and be good at doing that at all. But I don't. You know, I came across someone in a networking event on business, and I said about, you know, like I don't want kids and I wouldn't want that lifestyle, and it really triggered them, because they're like, oh, that's just a myth that you can't have the lifestyle you want with children. But I know it's not a myth, because I can't go clubbing at the moment because I've got 2 broken bones in my back. I don't know the situation with that. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, if I can go clubbing again or not. I really hope I can, but I have no idea, because 2 broken bones in your spine is not a good way to be, right? I've got ice packs currently, if you want to know, up my back, which you can't see on camera, but I've got 4 ice packs currently. Here's one of them just to prove it, right? So I'm currently sat with 4 ice packs, right? My point being is that I've distracted myself with ice packs now. But my point being is that if you know things about yourself and you're certain of them, you've got to get someone who's compatible with you, and also who's on the same page as you. And anyone who tells you that it's just a myth that you can't have the lifestyle you want with kids, it's not true. You have to change yourself and the lifestyle you have if it's not currently suitable for having children. So say I could go out clubbing at the moment, which I can't. If I want to go out clubbing till 2 a.m. in the morning and I've got a baby that needs feeding, I can't do both, can I? It's absolutely ridiculous. And if you're I don't like talking about breastfeeding. It makes me feel really sick and disgusted. But if you're with someone who wants to breastfeed and you want to go clubbing and that baby needs breast milk at such and such a time, this makes me cringe talking about this. You can't just go around, oh, I'm going to go clubbing now, or whatever, till 2 in the morning with my mates. See you bye to the baby. It doesn't work like that. So you have a different lifestyle when you have kids. You have to be at home a lot more. You have to take care of them when they cry and watch their health and watch what they eat and everything. The baby's dependent on you. You can't lead a completely independent life and go and do whatever you wanted to do before you got a baby. It's just absolutely ludicrous to think you can. So it's not a myth that you can't have the lifestyle you want with a baby. You'd have to change your mindset about the lifestyle you want and have a different lifestyle in mind to coexist with the baby. But you can have the lifestyle you've currently got if your lifestyle doesn't support what a baby would need. My example was the clubbing. You know what I mean? If the baby needs feeding, you're out clubbing, that doesn't go together, does it? So it depends what type of person you are. If you're a person who's a homebody, who loves being at home, doesn't like going out very much, likes cooking, likes cleaning, likes housework, wants a baby, can give time, care, and attention to it, always put their needs first, doesn't need to go out, can give up lots of time going out, can have sleepless nights, can change nappies, loves all that stuff, then you're fine. You're good to go, aren't you? But if your lifestyle's like, I want to go out all the time, I want to go to this bar, I want to go to this club, I want to go to this concert, I want to spend 2 weeks away or whatever, all this type of thing. And then you're talking about bringing a baby into all that. It's just not going to work. You can't go and do both at the same time. I'm not saying you can never go traveling again, or you can never go out clubbing or do anything ever again in your life. I'm not saying that. But if you want to have the total freedom to do what you want when you want in those respects, you can't. Same as if you're in a serious committed relationship that's monogamous. You can't go around like snogging other people, having sex with other people if you're in a serious committed relationship. You have to adapt and change somewhat if you're in a relationship. You can't be identically the same because you've taken another person on in a team with you. Otherwise, you may just well be single. In a team, you have to have 2 team players playing. Otherwise, you end up playing on your own and being in your own game of life. And therefore, the other person ends up having to leave because they're not pulling their weight or doing anything, right? So you've got to think about all these things. And you must have a lot of communication before marriage. If you're going to get married, you must be talking about goals for yourself, long-term goals for the relationship, long-term goals for the marriage, long-term goals for how you see your life being together. If a person says, I want to get married, you're like, I do too. They propose to you, but then they're like, oh, well, one of my goals is to go around America next year, but I'm going to be gone for 8 months. And it's something I feel I need to do on my own. I can't take you with me. Are you going to be happy with that? Spending 8 months of your married life on your own? No, you're not. I don't think so. So that's not suitable either. So you have to talk about all your, your plans together and what you want to do and all these types of things before you decide getting married. Of course you need to discuss sex and kids and, and what your habits are and your lifestyle, where you're going to live together or not live together. I talked about living together on another episode, so I don't want to go all the ways about living together I mentioned, but obviously I mentioned external environment in living together. What you want in your external environment, what you want to do like out of the relationship, and what you want to, what the people you hang around with, the family, the friends and everything like that. And then your internal environment, your decor and furniture, and you've got to sort all that out together, agree on it all, household bills, share them or not share them. All this comes into marriage because a lot of people do want to live together in marriage, but some people don't. They have what they call a living apart together relationship, which is what I want, but without the marriage. And years ago, they did a like survey, or they did some article in a newspaper, and it said that 10% of the UK population has a living apart together relationship. And I presume that most of the people interviewed for that were heterosexual. So there's a lot of people who have relationships, even marriages, and they're not living together. They're having a living apart together relationship. So they're maybe married or not married, but living in separate places, but committed to each other monogamously, which can be harder sometimes, but it could be more loyalty because you've got distance between each other and you have to remain faithful in that. So that can be a good test of the relationship, right? But you have to be thinking about all these things. If you get married, like, which country are you going to get married in if you've married someone who comes from a family that is not even in the same country? What type of wedding are you going to go for if you're both different religions? What will you wear? Like, some people like a pagan wedding, for example, which is very unconventional compared to traditional weddings. Do you want a church wedding? Do you want to get married on Barbados, Las Vegas? Do you know what I mean? You've got to think about all these things. But don't just think about the marriage. You need to think about the life after marriage. Remember, you're tying yourself into contract for a very long period of time with this person. And if things go sour, you might feel like it's the worst thing you've done in your life, and it might be very expensive to get a divorce, a lot of stress, a lot of hassle. Whereas if you never get married in the first place and have to split up, it's a lot easier financially. Might not be easy emotionally. It's a lot easier financially because yes, you might have to move out and you might find it hard to make ends meet. But if you have to move out anyway, find it hard to make ends meet. But then you've got all the extra expense with getting a divorce with solicitors' fees. That's going to be a lot harder. So I think in terms of safeguarding yourself and logicalness, in terms of like, if you need to split up, it's better not to get married. So if you split up, it's a lot easier to, it's not easy in terms of emotions and feelings, but it's easier in terms of practical financial stuff to just be able to go without being financially tied to that person. So always remember these things. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's stream. Don't forget a copy of Asexual Perspectives. If you're watching on replay, hello to you. And Asexual Perspectives talks about love, life, and sex from an asexual point of view. Is to celebrate our diversity across the asexual spectrum, our differences within it. There's 47 asexual stories, and Asexual answers pretty much any question you've got about asexuality through the answers to their questions, and shares parts of their own asexual story in the process. So whether you've got a question about sexual attraction, sexual desire, arousal, masturbation, BDSM, porn, marriage, kids, living together, relationships with sexuals, advice from other asexuals, anything you want like that, it's in this book. I spent a year writing this book, right, for your benefit. So go and get a copy of Asexual Perspectives, one-time purchase for a lifetime of knowledge. On Amazon, at Barnes & Noble, Blackwell's, Walmart, and all good bookshops, Waterstones as well. And also Diary Confessions of a Hyperromantic Asexual, 78 life lessons to ace your life. They're very important life lessons. Go and grab your copy of this on Amazon. This will be in other stores as well, but at the moment it's just on Amazon. So go and grab a copy of both of these. Link should be in the description to that, or just type in Asexual Perspectives to Amazon or Diary Confessions of a Hyperromantic Asexual into Amazon, and that'll come up, or other sites. Anyway, for Asexual Perspectives, lots of love to you. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell icon, thumbs up, and share this video if you think someone may benefit from it. As always, thank you, Jonathan, for being in chat, and everyone else that's been here tonight. If you're tuning in the daytime or morning, then I'll say good morning to you, good night if it's nighttime, and good day if it's in the day. Lots of love, stay ace, and I'll see you soon on the next video live stream. Lots of love, take care, bye.